and welcome to today's segment of The Power of Money. I'm your host, Michelle Graves, nationally and internationally known for over the last 36 years, can't believe it, as the Money Lady, and I remain committed to bringing you the very best of the best in terms of financial information, trends, topics, just things that you need to know to enable you and your family to make good, strong, sound financial decisions. Today, I am honored to have in the studio, again, back to that best of the best guests today to talk about elder financial abuse, which is rising and I totally predict will probably be epidemic in the years ahead as more and more people are aging and not able to make good decisions. So if you're listening or watching, you make sure you sit down for this entire hour and that you call your friends and family members, church, synagogue, whatever your faith, you make sure they're watching this show because this is, in my opinion, historic. It's also been the most difficult show for me to prepare for because frankly, I had no idea that it was this intense and this critical. But again, that's where we begin today. So I've got two guests, and I'm going to introduce them both to you and give you a little bit of information about them. And then we're going to show a video. And then we're going to get into the meat of this conversation today. Again, the topic is elder financial abuse. My first guest is Tom Fields. How are you, Mr. Fields?
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here with me. Cameras, if you could focus on him while I read this bio. Tom Fields is the State Director of the National Association to End Elder Financial Abuse. Mr. Fields was rudely awakened to how older adults are financially exploited when his father died in 1991. His father, Irving Fields, passed away then as a result of cancer that had been diagnosed and treated months earlier. Just hours before he died, while on a morphine drip and under a doctor's do not resuscitate order, Irv signed two financial documents which contradicted one another. The last document contradicted not only the first one, but also the will and trust documents which Irving kept in a bank vault, as well as law records of lawyers who showed up with this last document for him to sign, a document which benefited the family of one of the lawyers. Doctors were involved in these events, the last one admitting under oath that what he did as a favor for the lawyer who was a friend and whom he thought was acting as a spokesperson for Irving, not knowing that just 2 days earlier, Irving had told other lawyers not only that he had, quote, extreme distrust, close quote, for this lawyer, but also that this lawyer had been trying to get him to sign documents which he had refused to sign. As a result of this experience and his experience with the courts, Mr. Fields, my guest today, has worked tirelessly to advocate legal reforms which would protect individuals with severe cognitive impairment from being taken advantage of at the time they execute wills, trusts, POAs, deeds, mortgages, and other important legal/financial instruments, and so protect them and others from the ruinous litigation which often results under such circumstances. His efforts have been recognized by many others, including the Ohio State Bar Association's Director of Government Affairs. Mr. Fields grew up in Ohio, graduated from college in Ohio, and served in the U.S. Air Force during the Vietnam War. He's a proud veteran. He met his wife nearly 40 years ago and returned with her to Ohio 30 years ago, where they have lived ever since, raising 2 daughters and now helping out with 3 grandchildren. Tom Fields. My next guest is Craig Matthews. How are you, Craig?
Hello, Michelle.
Good to see you again.
Good seeing you.
Craig Matthews is an attorney at law, and he has been practicing in the fields of litigation and legal services since 1978. He is a general litigation practitioner with offices in Dayton, Ohio, and Cincinnati, Ohio. Attorney Craig Matthews has been selected as one of the top 100 litigation lawyers in the state of Ohio by the American Society of Legal Advocates. The American Society of Legal Advocates is an invitation-only nationwide organization of elite lawyers in practice today, drawing its membership from lawyers who combine stellar legal credentials with a proven commitment to community engagement and the highest professional standards. He has also been reviewed as excellent by his peers, a VVO superb rating 9.4 out of 10 for ethical standards and legal ability. Today we're going to talk about two of his areas of expertise, which is elder fraud litigation and guardianship litigation. Thank you, gentlemen, both for joining me today. And I'd just like to say, can I have the cameras on me? Because this is just this important. I must confess to you that until Mr. Fields bathed me, literally baptized me in all of this information about guardianships and seniors, I had no clue. And it is with great difficulty and pained difficulty that I am having this interview with these two industry experts, top in their fields, about this. You may not think it affects you, but yes, it does. It has the potential to change your life forever. It has the potential to change your parents' and grandparents' lives forever. So do not take the information that's being shared today lightly. Do not zoom past it as, I don't really care. Oh, you would want to care, because it's just that real. So without further ado, we're going to show a video that Mr. Fields was so kind enough to share with us, and then we're going to get into the meat of the program today. If you would, please.
Do you want to do your last will and testament? Okay. You need to speak up because Dixie's recording this, so no one challenges that this is what you want to do. So
We're having a
you
difficult
mean
time
yes.
hearing sound, but
Okay, so yes, you want to do your last will and testament?
Yes.
what is
Do you
going
want Frances Ann to have any of your money?
No.
Do you want Frances Ann to have your house at Swiss Avenue?
No. I want my job.
Who do you want to have the house at Swiss Avenue?
I want.
You want what?
I want to kill myself.
Right, but just in case you, when you die, who do you want the house to go to?
To
The
Who are the
boys.
boys?
Right here?
They're standing right here. Do you know, what are their names?
Justin and Mark.
And they're who you want to have your property? Okay. Now, have you asked me to prepare your last will and testament?
Yes.
Okay. Are you of sound mind to prepare it, to execute it?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to sign? Let me tell you what it says. It says that you are giving all your property to Mark and Justin. You're giving your real and costume jewelry to Beatrix and Grayson. And you're going to give the cradle rocking chair to Frances Ann Giron. Is this what you want done?
Well, if you want.
Okay, well, I need you to say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you want Dixie to be the independent executrix of your will, to be your executor?
If she wants to.
Okay, and if she doesn't want to be, is Robert L. Mark, Bob, okay to be the follow-up executor?
If he wants to be.
Now, are you saying if he wants to be? Is that what you just said?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, I am going to, I understand that you want your body to be cremated, is that correct?
That's right.
And where do you want your ashes to go?
On 49 Swiss Avenue.
Okay, you're doing just fine now. I'm just going to have you sign the will that you want to execute. You hold that. Just hold that. Okay, Mary Ellen, this is the pin. Can you see right here? Make your mark right there. Here, tilt it up more.
Yes, you can X, honey.
There you go, right there. Okay, there you go. Okay, Mary Ellen, hopefully we won't need this, but you're all done.
Okay, we are back, having seen that disturbing true account of a situation involving guardianship. Mr. Fields, would you be so kind to speak to that video that you were so kind to make available to us to watch?
First of all, that video was exhibited, it came to my attention through a ABC News website where it was part of a report that ABC did on this particular case.
Mm-hmm.
It's a case out of Texas, not Ohio, but it's particularly important because of the fact that in 3 minutes you see what goes on. I have a stack of papers in my own case that easily is this high of evidence, and this video in 3 minutes does what people would have to go through a stack of papers, and people are not going to go through a stack of papers, but I have always hoped that they'll watch a video. This kind of video was first brought to my attention by Diane Armstrong, who is the author of this book that I brought to your attention.
Okay, yeah, this book, The Retirement Nightmare,
And
Dr. Diane Armstrong.
And Diane worked with a couple of attorneys out in California, Garb and Farb, I think their names are, many years ago, long before this video, telling me that attorneys were making this kind of video to try to convince courts that everything was fine, as in this woman's case. The reason why the attorney made the video is because he knew that he would have to convince a court that she was fine to sign the documents. And we can go into a lot of discussion about whether she was competent or not. That's really second to the point here. Second, the main point here is what is done. How do you determine if a person's competent? How do you make sure that a person's not being taken advantage of in this situation? And this is what I focus on. I don't focus on whether she was taken advantage of or not. Now, in this particular case, the attorney was disbarred. He was indicted on criminal charges. He lost his appeals. The two gentlemen that he represented that were also shown in the video, one has cancer and has not been prosecuted because of that. The other one has been convicted. His case is on appeal at this point. This woman, again, she had just suffered a massive stroke and was rushed to the emergency room. That's where they showed up to take advantage of her.
And how did they know she was there?
I can't really answer that. I don't know for sure,
Okay.
but they did have a long-standing relationship, and they had been trying to interest her in giving them property for quite a while. Again, it's interesting just to put a little different face on this than perhaps that you might be familiar with at this point. The attorney, when he was disbarred, was not disbarred for taking advantage of her in this way, due to her incompetency. He was convicted because of what the video showed versus what he did later. The video shows him having her sign 2 pieces of paper in this document. He filed a document with 3 pieces of paper. The 3rd piece of paper was not brought to her attention when she signed it. It was a paper basically that was attesting to her signature, and having stated he was present. I forget the exact term off the top of my head. He was disbarred because obviously he lied, and he admitted eventually that he lied, saying that it was signed in her presence. It was like the Al Capone case. Al Capone is reputed to have been a perpetrator of many crimes, but he was never convicted for any of those crimes. He was convicted supposedly for tax evasion.
Correct.
This is what's going on with the elder abuse cases. They are not been decided by the obvious abuses that are going on, and often they are being decided by things that are really quite secondary of importance. And that's very troubling to me.
I'd like you to speak to that.
Well, I want to first offer my condolences over the loss of your father and the terrible circumstance that you went through in that regard. And I certainly welcome your efforts to educate the public as to problems that are going on, and welcome you joining the fight against elder fraud. I think that the video is just a small piece of the puzzle here. You see 3 minutes of someone's life, and the question in a situation like this is, the primary question is, was this woman competent to understand the nature of the documents that she was signing and what their effect was? That's not an easy question to answer. Just looking at that 3-minute video, in fact, I showed it to some of my friends and my wife and such, and I get different reactions. Some people say, well, she's clearly incompetent. Other people say, well, she seemed to understand what she was doing. So you have to really look the rest of the story. You have to look at the background. And here, you know, the lawyer obviously did not believe that he was doing something wrong, or he would not have taped it.
He would not have.
In many cases of elder fraud, these documents are executed secretly. There's no one present.
Really?
Except the perpetrator.
Okay.
And shoves a paper under the nose of someone, and no one sees what's going on. Here, at least there's a camera and with a microphone, and you can hear and judge for yourself.
That's interesting. What are your thoughts?
I have several. Most importantly, I would say that I would disagree totally with what Craig said when he said what was most important was whether she was competent or not. I think what was most important is whether she was being taken advantage of or not, which is a totally different question.
Is that a legal question?
It's also a legal question. And I think that one of the big problems we have in dealing with these cases of severe versus mild cognitive impairment, cases like this one in this video, is we confuse the two issues between the importance of whether she was competent or whether she was being taken advantage of. And because of this, we often decide these cases based on statements by doctors saying, well, the person, in my opinion, was competent to sign the document.
Well, let me interrupt. What is your definition of competent versus being taken advantage of? Because the assumption is if you're incompetent, you're more open to being taken advantage of versus if you're competent.
To answer your question, I'd like to point out the following, which Craig can address, I'm sure, as a lawyer. You can be perfectly competent. In fact, by definition, you have to be competent to be a victim of fraud.
Okay.
So, again, if you're talking about a fraud case, is it important that you were competent, or is it important that you were being taken advantage of? In this case, if you decide that she was competent, you still have the question of was she being taken advantage of. Now, there's a clear sign that there was a concern by the lawyer that she was not competent, or questions would be raised about her competency. And that is because he made the video. He had the question, he had the concern, so he made the video. So the question wasn't whether she was competent, which maybe the video does or doesn't show depending on your definition of competency, but it doesn't go into the questions. No questions were asked to find out if she was being taken advantage of. For example, was her daughter notified that this was going on? Now, the daughter's the one that provided me this video and provided it to the authorities. It was entered into evidence. So there was no protection because the daughter wasn't notified. Now, obviously, the courts eventually sided with the daughter. But again, the daughter had to go through what she has had to go through and why she is giving the video out to me to share with others because of how it affected her. So again, the emphasis on competency is a question that's been so perverted by our courts that it is actually almost meaningless. Here in Ohio, as reported by a Legislative Service Commission back in 1994 in regards to one of my legal reforms I proposed, the definition in the case Bevan versus State of Ohio, or Bevan versus Bevan, I don't remember the exact citation anymore, stated that if you are hallucinating, or delusional, I think was the word, if you are delusional, a document you will sign will still be upheld, even if you're delusional, unless it can be proved two things. First, that it was an insane delusion.
An insane
delusion. So not just being delusional itself. I mean, to me, what's the difference? I don't want to get into that. The second thing is you have to prove that that insane delusion caused you to sign it. Now, one of the problems is this lady, I believe, if I remember correctly, the report, she died 9 days afterwards.
She died 9 days after this video?
Yes.
Okay.
So
it's related to the cause for her hospitalization?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, she was in a very bad situation.
Yes, okay.
In my dad's case, he died within hours.
Within hours?
Yes. He was on a morphine drip and under a do not resuscitate order while he was being taken advantage of. His cancer had ruptured his stomach that morning. The nurse had found him writhing in pain in his bed, called a doctor to his bedside. She couldn't even get his pulse without Doppler effect or something like that. And basically, she called the doctor. The doctor started my father on fluids. You know, he had a living will expressing he didn't want to be resuscitated, but because of the emergency, you know, he didn't have time to consult it, I guess, or it wasn't in the record. Whatever the reason was, he resuscitated my father. Explained to my father what his choices were. My father said he didn't want to be resuscitated. The doctor entered a do not resuscitate order into the record, put him on morphine, and then all hell broke loose.
I'd like to shift to Craig because he's brought up a lot of issues that, because I'm not an attorney, but do give me some cause for maybe definitional clarification for my viewers. And can you frame this? Because I don't want to just focus on that video. That was a very troubling video because the objectivity that I always applaud myself, which is I'm always objective, you know, substantiates facts, it was difficult. So let's frame it in a broader context.
I think the video is a helpful illustration of the issues that we face here. But, but in the broad context, I believe competency is a key factor, and I have to disagree with Tom on that. The question here is when people are signing documents, what do they want?
Right.
Because the law should affect what they want. And are they being taken advantage of, not being taken advantage of? That depends on what they want. And in order to have ideas and to know what you want, you have to be competent. You have to understand who you are, who your family is, who your friends are. You have to have some sense of what your assets are in order to make what are called testamentary decisions, decisions about what do I want to happen after I die. Well, you've got to know enough about your circumstance. That's competency. That's testamentary capacity. Do you know who you are? Do you know who your friends are? Do your family? Do you have a sense of what you have?
Now, does the law establish these thresholds in determining competency?
There are factual questions.
Okay.
Okay, and you look at sometimes to medical experts.
Okay.
You know, the doctors that might be able to testify as to, well, this person was on a medication and were virtually sleeping at the time. But I'm not talking about this video, but just generally. So
in
doctors
general, yeah,
can,
just establishing
can
a
comment
context.
upon it, and also family members and friends that get to know the person. The second area that you're looking into, so one is competency. Did the individual, did they know what they were doing? Did they have the mental capacity to understand the nature of what they were doing? Secondly, were they unduly influenced? So someone can be competent, but tricked.
Yeah.
That
happens a lot of times to normal people.
Yes, sometimes you can be a rocket scientist and be in the top of your game, and you can be a victim of a scam.
Right.
It happens all the time.
Right.
Bernie Madoff. You know,
Classic.
some of his victims were brilliant, successful people. No question as to their competency. But there's some subjective questions as to whether someone is undue influenced, under undue influence. Here, the background of this case involved a contest between two people who wanted this woman's house. One was the daughter, and the other two were these two men that were close friends. I mean, there'd been a long-standing relationship.
The two men were attorneys.
No,
they were not.
They were not.
Oh my
attorneys.
goodness.
No,
Okay, they were not attorneys.
Correct. They're just associates of
Okay,
her.
okay.
Correct. And the question was, what did she really want to happen to that house?
Okay.
So that's not an easy question. Sometimes people might think, well, it should have gone to the daughter.
Well, it's the mother's decision.
Correct.
Period.
And I've been practicing law for 35 years now.
Yeah.
I've had clients that don't want their estate to go to their children for whatever reason. Or they might want to go to one child but not another.
Yes,
These
yes.
are, and as long as the person understands the nature of their choices, then they should be allowed to make that determination. Now here Tom talked about the outcome of this case, but it's not as clear as as some might believe, because the one individual that benefited from this document, one of the men
two
that she
men,
knew, correct, he was eventually convicted.
Okay.
But the court sentenced him to a $1,000 fine and 30 days in jail.
Are you
So-
serious?
This is correct. Which tells me, what does this tell
Well,
you?
it tells you that the court was not crisp
It
on the
tell-
data, perhaps, the
well,
information?
it tells you that this is theft, if,
Yeah.
if it's proven.
Yeah.
And and the courts have discretion in sentencing. The maximum sentence in a case like this, I believe, under that law at the time was, I think, in 20 years or more. That means that the judge, after seeing the evidence, he saw more than just this video. He saw the whole, he had all the witnesses. He decided that, well, it's not as bad as it looks. Otherwise, he would have imposed the biggest sentence. If the judge was convinced that this woman was clearly taken advantage of and her wishes were not upheld, he would have been more inclined to 20 years. So
One would think.
you would think. You
Yeah,
would
one
think.
would
So
think.
we don't know. We don't know what was going on there, but there's some indication that there's more to this story than meets the eye. These are very difficult cases. They're very fact intensive to determine. One, did the person have competence? Do they understand what they were doing? Two, were they unduly influenced? Because the person is gone. By the time these cases are in front
They
of a
can't
court,
talk from the
they
grave.
cannot talk from the grave.
They cannot.
Correct. And a lot of times
do it.
elders are isolated. That's one thing I liked about this video, because you could see the circumstances surrounding the signing, and then you can make your own conclusions and hear the other evidence. But 99% of the time, this is done in secret. This is done where
With no
camera,
nothing.
no audio recording. All of a sudden, the person is dead. It's a year later. A will turns up that has unusual provisions in it. No one even knew that, gosh, Mom had signed a will giving everything to my, my cousin and wiping out the rest of the family. It doesn't make sense. Mom loved us.
I'm just going to say as a sidebar, is that, because I specialize in asset protection for seniors. I have for 30 years, and I just had the shock of my life because one of my clients for almost 20 years died rather quickly from pancreatic cancer. I was not aware, and there is a trust instrument that he executed without my knowledge. Of course, you have no way to get trust is end of story, but he poured all of those investment assets into that trust and carved out his daughter. And we don't know where the money went. We don't know where the money went. We don't know the attorneys involved. Obviously, it's a legitimate trust instrument.
You hope.
Well, it was an irrevocable. Because I did check with one of my companies, and they said, Michelle, it dispersed into an irrevocable trust dated, and I was like, this happened a couple of months before he died. And I have no way of knowing or even getting resolution, and the daughter is devastated.
Well, a good indication I find is it raises a red flag in my mind when a document is signed shortly before death that completely changes the estate plan that the person had signed off on in all the years previously. That's a red flag.
Yeah.
And see, in that video, I don't know what her other intention. Maybe she always wanted to give to this guy.
I have no idea. People do what people do when they age, but I do know, and isolation and other things begin to come to the forefront, and I just find this very disturbing, the process. Do you have any thoughts?
Boy, I have lots of them.
I'm listening.
One of the issues that we addressed here and that Craig specifically addressed was competency
Yes.
versus being
Taken
unduly
as
influenced. And those are really quite connected, but they're done in such a way that it's quite ambiguous because it's not done well. And many of our laws are not done well, and that's where I come in.
That's where I've read enough.
In particular, a foremost authority who wrote about undue influence was Dr. Irwin Pear, who taught medicine law at Rutgers University, and he published his report that I'm referring to in 1980. So this is not a new problem. It actually goes back to biblical times. But anyhow, and maybe before then. But he published a report in the American Academy of Psychiatry and Law titled Wills, Testamentary Capacity, and Undue Influence. And he addresses this question of being